Welcome to Travel Around the Block. Join Joel, Mike, and their guests as they explore how Web3 and AI are reshaping the way we journey, invest, and connect across the globe.
All right, welcome back to Travel Around the Block, where we explore the latest innovation in travel. So today we're thrilled to welcome Matt Stevens, co-founder and CEO of Talewind.ai. So Matt has spent quite a few years at the intersection of Web3 and travel. Previously, he was the CFO at Travala.com, which is a crypto-enabled OTA or online travel agency. He left a fairly stable career to build Talewind.ai. It's revolutionizing how content creators monetize their travel passion. We're going to get a lot deeper into that. It's an area of interest for me, especially. Whether you're a travel influencer, a content creator, or a distribution executive looking to unlock revenue streams, or simply someone that's fascinated by how AI is reshaping discovery and travel exploration, Matt's journey offers an incredible insight. So with that, let's get started and welcome Matt to the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
So Matt, let's just right into your background. Obviously, you were a CFO at Travala.com. Just curious, was that your first stint into the travel industry? Were you in travel before?
I started out, at least my whole life, I was a big traveler and a passionate traveler, but professionally started out in accounting and finance. I worked at KPMG for 6 years at the beginning of my career, and then moved to London to do an MBA. And the MBA program was really the first inflection point, I think, in my career where I decided I wanted to move away from professional services and move towards more operations and more entrepreneurial type roles. So I worked for a media investment fund there for a few years. And then when I came back to Canada in 2020, I went through the Entrepreneur First Incubator program. And it was an amazing program that really helped me figure out as an entrepreneur what I wanted to build and what impact I wanted to have. And I decided that I wanted to build something meaningful in the travel space. But at that point, I hadn't worked in travel yet. So instead of trying to build something straight away, I went off and tried to find a meaningful role where I could have a lot of impact with a travel company. And that's how I ended up at Travala. And it was great timing to start with Travala. This was now 2021, and the crypto bull run was really starting to take off, the one that sort of brought a lot of people into crypto and into Web3 during the pandemic. So it was a period of huge growth for Travala and really interesting things happening both on the travel side and on the Web3 side. So that was a great learning opportunity, and a lot of the ideas that we have at Tailwind and what we're doing here came out of that time working both in Travala from a travel perspective, but also learning a lot from a Web3 perspective.
Matt, if you don't mind, I was just wondering, when you thought about your impact as an entrepreneur, what was it about travel as a space that made that appealing in terms of kind of an impact area? Just curious if you have anything you're willing to share, peeling back the curtain a little bit about your thought process.
Yeah, other than being a personal passion of mine, travel and exploration, I really think that the experiences that we have meeting other people, interacting with other cultures, learning different ways of life around the world, I think those things are formative for lots of people. People sometimes are dismissive of travel as being, a sexy industry to be in that people want to be in just because they like to travel themselves. But I actually think it's very profound and impactful on many people's lives. So I wanted to build something that helped people experience more of the world, have more meaningful experiences in the world, and hopefully create a little bit more better understanding of other ways of life and other people.
Very cool. That really resonates. And over to you, Mike.
Yeah, great.
No, I love that, Matt. Very similar ethos for me. When I got into hospitality, one of the reasons I loved it is because, first of all, every day is different. There's always a challenge or a problem to solve, but you're also meeting so many different people from across the world. And then once you start traveling, you're really able to sample the culture, the people, the food, and we kind of expand your perspective in the world. So I also find it super interesting that you went from kind of the accounting space into the travel space, but decided to kind of dive deep into travel without any background in it, but at the same time, also Web3. So if I think about, if you're a CFO at Travala, this isn't just a normal, quote unquote, normal accounting for organization. You're having to deal with a whole new emerging treasury, capital formation, organization, all that. That's got to be double the amount of challenge and daunting. So how did you handle that?
I think my background, as I say, is in finance. I'm fascinated by numbers and I'm fascinated by the way that people transact and sort of money and information moves around the world. Of course, apart from wanting to learn about the travel space, I find the Web3 space very interesting in all elements of a CFO's role, whether it's treasury management or it's reporting or it's financial analysis. They're all heavily, they're very different in the crypto world than they are in more traditional finance. Yeah, there was a lot of learning on both sides there, the travel side and the Web3 side for sure. But I think what was interesting, particularly for travel is a relatively low margin business, right? Like the margins that are being earned by online travel agencies on flights, hotels, they're low margin relative to other product categories. And so when you look at even the benefit of streamlining your payment processes or optimizing sort of your cost structure for payment processes, that's meaningful in travel, even if it's a couple of, percentage points that you're able to save with
Absolutely.
crypto. So there's some real gains to be made in travel with crypto, and that made it meaningful to learn both at the same time, as opposed to just plugging crypto in randomly to any type of business. There's a real use case for it in travel for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. We're definitely seeing a lot more conversation around using stablecoin or crypto as a payment method, the
Mm.
efficiency of cross-border transactions, and elimination of potential middleman fees and so forth. Very interesting area. And obviously within the US, we're keeping an eye on where the Clarity Act passes, because I think that's going to give a lot of people a lot more comfort as to what the framework and regulation looks like. So
Yeah.
obviously another area that we're really excited and interested in on, but we definitely want to talk a lot more about Tailwind, because
Yeah.
you've been building Tailwind for the past few years. And I think a while ago when you first told me about this, it was fairly early. I think you were just coming out of Incubator. Is that right?
Yeah, so we went through the Next Canada Incubator, so a year and a half ago now. And Next Canada was an incredible, incredible incubator. It's a fully not-for-profit organization. You don't pay to go in it. They don't take any equity. It's free for founders. And their mission really is to develop the next generation of Canadian entrepreneurs. Of course, most people in the program are working on a specific business, and the program is intended to help you advance that business. But really, the goal is to just make you successful as an entrepreneur in general and in a way that can move the needle for the Canadian economy. So they're a little bit more kind of agnostic about whether this business right now succeeds. They're more focused on, can you be successful as an entrepreneur throughout your career, and can you create value in Canada? So it's a really powerful program.
Matt, in terms of the actual founding of Tailwind, what were some of the seeds that germinated in your mind to have you come to the realization that, hey, this might be the space I want to play in? Can you
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about that founding story?
Yeah, I think that, we even just now, when people think about Web3, they think a lot about blockchain technology and crypto, right? And of course, that those things are foundational to Web3. But the other element that I think is discussed maybe less is like the non-technological part of it, which is just the idea of decentralization and community. And at Travala, we had a very powerful program there called the Ambassador Program, where members of the Travala community, like customers, people who use the platform, were able to act on behalf of the platform and promote their trips and earn rewards on Travala towards their bookings. So a kind of, in one sense, fairly standard loyalty program feature where you can earn rewards. But the way that Travala did it really empowered people within their community to feel like they were part of the business and to feel like they were making a difference. And that was very motivating for people and very powerful for the company. So I think one of the founding ideas of Tailwind is that there's a huge amount of power in community. And if you can give people who manage and lead communities the tools to succeed, they can build real meaningful businesses just through their leadership of those communities and the influence that they have over those people or the inspiration that they provide to those people. So that was one of the sort of founding ideas of Tailwind. Of course, we'll talk about like how that translates to Tailwind in more detail. But the other thing was just seeing how messy the travel industry infrastructure is. And for years now, there's been a push towards creating more direct booking technology. And we can see in the data that people are booking direct with suppliers more often than they have in the past, as opposed to online travel agencies or other intermediaries. Even before AI, people have been trying to solve this problem of shortening the gap maybe between an end supplier and the traveler. And so the kind of founding idea for Tailwind came from this idea that content creators do have a huge amount of influence in the travel space. They have big loyal communities, but they don't have the tools they need to turn that inspiration and influence into big travel businesses, because there's so much standing in between the top of the funnel and the actual booking that a traveler makes. So the kind of conceptually what we're trying to do is to provide them with those tools to convert their influence and the inspiration into bookings and build real businesses out of them.
It's very interesting. And to me, I almost feel like what you're implying is that on one end of the continuum, we've had the transaction focus of the industry forever, but that
Yeah.
the more you look at it, there's a upfront decision process, maybe a dreaming, daydreaming, planning, forming, and all that influence of where am I going to go? Why am I going to go there? And I
Yeah.
almost feel like what you're implying is that the value has always accrued to the absolute last leg of the race, which is click here to book. And
Yeah.
I feel like what I'm hearing is that you're trying to move some of that value back up the funnel toward the place where actually those decisions are made and influenced and shaped, getting the direction of the vector. Is that right?
Yeah, very well said. Yeah, exactly. I think there's been a lot of research around trying to define and understand the traveler journey, right? The decision-making process of how people decide where they want to travel and how. And traditionally, that process has 4 stages: there's inspiration, research, planning, and then booking. And for many years now, content creators, and particularly social content creators, have had a huge amount of impact at the top of the funnel in the inspiration stage. But then, as you said, Joel, what typically happens is the inspiration that people take, that travelers take from creators, they take that inspiration and those ideas and they go perform research elsewhere, they do their planning elsewhere, and they ultimately book elsewhere. And travel platforms understand this, right? Like, travel platforms for years have been developing programs to try to bring creators into their ecosystem and use them as a distribution tool, right? Where if, like, for example, Expedia has their creator program, creators can build a shop on Expedia's site. And then by attracting their existing community, their existing audience towards their Expedia shop, they're providing the distribution and the inspiration part of the funnel, and then they're passing that traveler off to Expedia to execute the transaction and the booking. And so where value is captured, yeah, typically the creators are earning 4 to 8% commissions, depending on the product that we're talking about. But the majority of the value from that transaction accrues to the platforms. So what we're trying to do is to use agentic commerce to actually fully transfer ownership of their business and ownership of those transactions to the creators, giving them both the tools to move travelers from inspiration through the other stages of the booking journey and ultimately converting that booking with the creator, but also moving the margins and the economics more towards ownership for creators as well at the same time.
Very cool vision. And if just as a bit of an aside, when I think about the way the industry historically has thought, everything is, as you described, this phase, and it's always quite linear sequential. And I think as a thought for anyone listening who would benefit from it, I think it's helpful sometimes to think of things as a bit more of a sweater where the threads are tied together. And I feel like you're moving in a direction of connecting some things that have long been disconnected, that probably it's more of a conceptual disconnect, but in reality, it's all one process. Kudos to you for the direction. I think it's a very fresh take and long overdue. Can you share a little bit more about how you're using agentic AI? Can you share a little bit about how in your particular world you're leveraging that?
Yeah. And to give you some more context, so we're in a design partnership stage now where we're working very closely with a handful of creators to really build out their travel shops. And I'll explain what that is in advance of a traveler facing launch within a week or two. We're very close to that now, which is amazing because we've been working towards it for quite a while. So our product still is being built effectively. We haven't started promoting it yet. So caveat that. But what we are building and what we're building towards in terms of using agents for commerce is sort of a 3-stage agentic commerce platform. So the first stage is building, and then operating, and then growing online travel businesses for creators. So in the building stage, which is what we've mostly built so far, we're using AI to connect with all of the creators' existing channels. So we can connect to their Instagram channel, their TikTok, their YouTube, blog posts, whatever that they have, however they create content, we can connect to their content. We analyze that content, we bring it into Tailwind, into our environment, and then we tag and organize all of it. So we're performing semantic analysis over videos and over photos, and we're understanding the places that they've visited and the recommendations they've made and who they've traveled with and who their target audience is, all that kind of stuff. Once we've got all of their content aggregated and organized and tagged in one place, then we are automatically building an ecosystem of guides, of itineraries, of plans on top of the content that they already have. What that gives them is a tool where their communities live on their existing platforms. Their communities live on Instagram or on TikTok or through their newsletters or whatever it is. They, instead of passing those travelers off to booking.com or off to Expedia to perform more research and make a booking, they can pass them into their own Tailwind shop where we have added booking links, we've added comparison shopping, we've aggregated all that other information that travelers need to make a decision. So hopefully we can keep that traveler with the creator for longer, right? So that's one. The second is operating. So once you come into Tailwind as a traveler, now, of course, we want to make it as easy as possible for you to explore that creator's content. And we've built multi-agent systems behind a chat interface that sort of looks and feels like a chat interface that everybody knows now from existing LLMs like ChatGPT, but it's specifically plugged into that creator's body of knowledge. So when you're interacting with it, it's helping you to search and find that creator's best recommendations for you as a traveler. And what we're hoping to accomplish there is it's very difficult as a traveler to discover and to explore all of a creator's different stuff, right? Because it might be fragmented across different platforms. Or even if you're in Instagram, you have a single feed that you have to scroll down to find older content. We're allowing all of that to be discovered through a chat interface and through a map and a sort of more traditional travel interface to make that content evergreen for the creator and more discoverable for the traveler. And then the growth piece, which is more forward looking, is building agents that will actually actively evaluate opportunities for creators to expand into new product verticals, to build partnerships with travel brands and whoever else they think might be appropriate. And they can do that by, again, because we have all the creators' content analyzed and tagged within our system, they could identify, for example, that a creator has visited several beachfront luxury resorts. And so that growth agent could proactively reach out to beachfront resorts that we have partnerships with and suggest that creator for a partnership. And all of this can happen without the creator ever being involved at all until the point where they can come in and approve or consummate the partnership. The goal here really is to allow creators to continue to do what I think are the three highest value things they do, which is creating content, it's building and fostering community, and it's actually traveling. So we want to allow them to just do those three things, and we will manage the running, the building, the running, and the growth of their business for them.
Wow. So travel content creator and influencers rejoice because you're basically simplifying their you're basically simplifying their life, right, in a way, and also helping them optimize their business. Because the way I'm thinking about it, Matt, is essentially you're creating kind of like a Shopify platform for travel content creators with
Correct.
an agentic chief product officer, agentic chief operating officer, and agentic chief business officer that's doing the build, operate, and grow. And their CEO that's
right.
basically big, at the end of the day, making the decision to say, yes, okay, go ahead. And yes, I want to have a partnership with this, or I want to get more into this. So I think that's super interesting because first of all, I think it's democratizing anyone that loves to travel, maybe haven't thought about creating content and creating a business out of it, because there's a lot of complexity around it. Which platform do you stick with? Are you locked into Expedia and you can't do booking? How many tools that you need to kind of operate and manage all the different social media platforms as well? So you're kind of aggregating all that into one centralized platform, putting in an agentic operation around it. So I think that's really interesting. And maybe that's even going to give people even for me right now, I'm like, I love to travel and I always take pictures and create contents and recommend places to people, but it's just so hard to get into this business, if you will. So with Tailwind, it seems like you're going to make that a lot easier for people. And one thing I really appreciate is your investor update email, if you will. You're giving very clear wins and losses or lessons learned, etc., where you guys are at. And I think that's really great. Wow, this is where you were when you had that original conversation. But a few months later, this is where you guys are at. And one of the things that I was very happy to see is the traction you guys are having with early, I don't know if you would say they're like early adopters, or how many content creators are you guys working with right now that's giving you guys kind of this feedback loop
Yeah, so we have about 240 creators on the platform,
for it?
but we're working with a much smaller group of about five for these design partnerships. Like we're putting a lot of time into those because from our perspective, I suppose the first thing to validate was whether this was something that creators wanted. And so through a lot of 2025, what we were doing was testing value propositions with creators, building our wait list and then launching. And what we found is there's a huge amount of demand for this. Like creators, I guess it's in one sense seems obvious. Creators really want easier ways to make money that take less of their time, right? As we all do. But one of the recurring problems that we heard was that there are ways for creators to promote their content through travel guides or through blog posts or whatever out there that exists already. But for the most part, they take quite a lot of time to set up, quite a lot of time to maintain. And so practically, many creators don't create great guides or write long blog posts just because of the time it takes to do that. So the big unlock initially for us was just we can automate that for you. We can understand your content and create authentic content that's coming from you in your words with your experiences automatically. We can take that like manual creation off your plate. But the more we talk to creators, the more we realize that it's not only the time it takes to build stuff, it's also just that they don't really have for social creators in particular, they don't really have an owned platform, right? Like their audience mostly lives on Instagram or lives on YouTube. There's no place that they really control the interaction with their audience. And so the other sort of part of the value proposition for us is building something that really transfers ownership to them and is not just another platform that is leveraging their distribution or leveraging their influence for its own sake.
I definitely now really feel their pain in a way because I do get the inspiration like, oh, wow, this place, look at where they're going. And, they make it, especially like travel YouTube videos, right? Then you get a lot of inspiration from where to visit, where to go, where to eat. And then immediately I exit that space and then I go into research on booking platforms, et cetera, et cetera. So then completely disconnected. I got the inspiration from the content creator. Great. Thank you very much. See you later. And then I move on from a transaction perspective off of any of their platform. So essentially now with Tailwind, you're enabling someone to be able to be inspired by the content creator, but they can go through monetization path for the traveler.
Exactly. Yeah. And sorry, in terms of validation as well, all we did was test some messaging and of course put out some content of our own through social channels primarily because that's where our target creators live. And we had a huge response sort of straight away to that idea of a platform that automates monetization for them. We were able to very sort of quickly build up a big wait list and onboard, as I say, hundreds of creators. But of course, the devil's in the details, and building a platform that actually does that is fairly complex. So a lot of the time in the second half of the year last year was really testing what was going to move the needle from an execution perspective for creators. And as I say, we're about a week or two away. By the time this airs, we will have launched our first sort of design partnership stores. So we're really excited to be kind of coming to the line finally for that.
And if I could, when you go live there, what key success metrics might be top of mind for you that you'll be monitoring closely to see how things are progressing?
So the way that we'll go live, which is probably a little bit different from a normal sort of travel platform, is that we're going, like the creators that we're working with, that we're our design partners, will be promoting their content, their shops on our platform. So we're not going live with, hey, here's Tailwind, we're this new platform, this is cool. Because our goal with these design partnerships is not to attract new creators to our platform, right? We know we can do that already. We have a playbook for that. It's now trying to activate those creator shops and drive traffic and hopefully bookings for them. So the way we're launching is to take these design partnerships, and we have a promotion strategy with each creator individually where we'll roll out content, some ads and stuff like that just promoting their shops and promoting, come and check out this creator's guide or this creator's itinerary or whatever. So you won't even see a ton of emphasis on Tailwind. And our metrics are not like traffic to our site. Our metrics are, can they generate traffic to their shop? Can they generate engagement, saves on their shops, and ultimately bookings through their Tailwind shop for the creators? And so for us, our approach is that's going to be at a very small scale, right? We're talking about five people that we'll start to promote. And we're not going for volume of bookings, but rather we're trying to prove that we can close that loop between fragmented content across a bunch of different platforms for an individual creator, all the way through to a shop that converts for them. And if we can demonstrate that we can close that loop for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 creators, then because so much of what we're doing is automated, that becomes hopefully very easily scalable to far more creators than that. That's our sort of game plan at this moment.
Gotcha.
Well, I feel like the opportunity here is potentially huge. To me, Tailwind is a really interesting name, both in the sense of tale as in a story, and a content creator in a sense is a storyteller. And so you're creating a bit of a wind behind their back in terms of the power of that, but also the long tail. And so I think the name is rather ingenious, and the long tail of content creators is rather vast. And I think if you're able to close the loop, as you say, on these early adopters, the potential is quite significant. Just wanted to share that observation. I'm kind of bullish from the sidelines. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Anything that you worry about, or anything that you think, this is something I really want to keep a really close eye on because this could potentially be a sticking point for a creator or for Tailwind in its growth ambitions? Like anything that's a minor worry bead at 3 a.m.?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of uncertainty generally in how like AI is going to evolve and what's going to become possible, right? So our vision for the product has evolved constantly as AI has, and how we've seen how it's impacting startups and technology and society in general. So I think the biggest kind of uncertainty is just keeping very close track of what's happening all the time in the AI space, because it makes new things possible every day.
Yeah.
I also think that the big thing that remains to be seen, and I have my own view on this, is how meaningfully people will start to rely upon AI for decision making, right? And what I mean by that here is there's obviously been already, like, people are adopting chat products like ChatGPT and Gemini very quickly. And in travel, a lot of people start their search on ChatGPT now, right? Give me some ideas for places to go, or give me recommendations for things to do in a particular place. So the question is, will AI become the starting point and kind of the undisputed starting point for people's travel explorations, as opposed to human content creators? Because conceivably, the technology is already there for you to have a conversation with an AI chatbot, and for that AI chatbot to then organize and book your whole trip for you. And you never have to talk to a person, right? Basically, it is already there. There are companies trying to do that already. My strong view is that even when that's possible, that people will want validation from real human beings that have traveled to a place. In my view of the future, they're the combination of people using AI for ideation, for planning, for figuring out logistics, but always coming back to a real person that they know and trust, who might be a creator who's been there, whose travel style aligns with theirs, or it might be friends and family, the other types of people that you ask for advice when you're thinking about travel. I think that people will always come back, or at least most people will always come back to real human authority. And so our thesis there is that instead of going all in on AI as the means of inspiration, or instead of fighting against it, we are trying to take that technology and give it to creators so that they can effectively compete in that world where the user experience needs to be automated. It needs to be really slick, and we can build that on top of their authentic, real human content, as opposed to as a standalone thing. But certainly that's something that not keeps me up at night, but that I think about a lot, is to what extent will people start to really trust or rely upon AI as opposed to real people, and how can we help creators to be as successful as possible in that environment?
Yeah, we can edit this tangent out, but I remember watching a football game and the ad comes up of, I'm taking a cross-country drive with my girlfriend, and what should the playlist be in the car, and what should I pack for the picnic, or something to that effect. And I feel like that advice that's AI generated starts to feel rather thin and tinny rather quickly. And sometimes I
Yeah.
think it misses the richness of the human experience. And even the very fact that it's AI generated can sometimes, I think there's a new type of social faux pas that hasn't been named yet, where you apply AI to a matter that AI should have had nothing to do with its birthday, for her
Right.
birthday, for example. And
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
AI properly has no role in it unless it's a light machine learning recommendation that's very tangential. We've digressed rather significantly, but to your point, I think humans definitely are driving the bus in terms
Yeah.
of wanting to hear from other humans and wanting to be inspired by other humans. And even as AI facilitates that ever more, I think it is a facilitation, and rather than like a wholesale swap to what should I do today, Mr. AI or Ms. AI. So
Yeah.
for what it's worth. And over to you,
Yeah.
Mike.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally agree.
So at some point, I think this is already being discussed by a lot of travel executives, is how do they also participate in this agentic world, right? Because
Yeah.
obviously there's going to be a lot of disruption across the entire travel journey, everything from inspiration to pre-stay to post-stay, etc., right? I
Yeah.
think the whole entire value chain, there's a play for agentic agents.
For sure.
And at some point, we have access to AI agents. And obviously, travel is a major use case. We've seen Gemini and so forth use travel as a use case whenever they demo or talk about their AI agent. And I think at some point, from a content perspective, we saw that already when ChatGPT like first launched, and we saw like, okay, Expedia, they're getting data from Expedia, like so
Yeah.
forth. So that when you go to
Yeah.
ChatGPT, you're like, I'm looking to go somewhere. ChatGPT doesn't have this knowledge, but they're able to access the wealth of data in Expedia, right?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think similar, like Tailwind at some point is going to get that critical mass of content creator content that because in a way, the way I'm seeing it, and we can edit this out, Matt, if you're like, okay, this is like the play that we're going to go down. This is not something I want to talk about yet, but
Sure. Yeah.
I'm
Let's
already
talk about it.
visualizing, let's say, you're building an infrastructure right now where you're able to centralize travel content from various channels into one
Yeah.
place in a way, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
either if it's Instagram or TikTok or YouTube, or even what's the Chinese one, the little red book, Xiaohongshu.
Yeah.
Like, so you're aggregating this like basically in this space, in this box. I can almost imagine having a Tailwind agent that is available to engage with other agents, so that
Mhm.
if Mike is saying something to whichever platform I'm using, let's say I'm trying to figure out if I want to go to, this place versus this place based on my interests, my cost requirements, etc., my budget, and so forth, right? I asked my agent that, and it's able to, of course, go to like all these other OTAs and so forth, or maybe Google Flights or Skyscanner and whatnot. But then I also understand, like, hey, Mike, you really like, I base on your, I don't know, YouTube history. I know
Yeah.
you really like this influencer and this influencer, or based on your Instagram browsing history, you really, get inspired by this influencer. I'm gonna go to Tailwind and see if they have content there and so forth. So in any case, I see that there's that potential for that data being that content wealth that you're gonna have
Yeah.
is gonna be accessible by AI agents in the future. And I think that's super interesting as well.
For sure. Yeah. And that's certainly thinking about Tailwind as a platform, as in, would a traveler or would a traveler's agent come and search or explore the platform as a whole and identify a creator? And that is a starting point, right? That's certainly something that we thought about for the future. But we've also made a sort of strategic decision in the short term to stay away from that, because we want to be laser focused on building a tool that helps creators monetize their existing communities rather than driving demand for them, if that makes sense. Like
Yeah,
the sort
absolutely.
of the theory behind it is that we're outsourcing distribution to the creators. They have communities already. They build them in different channels that are optimized for building community, like Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. Those channels are optimized for building community already. So in the short term, the idea of Tailwind as an exploration portal for travelers is not something that we're building, but certainly is something we will be able to build a compelling version of, like at the right time, if we decide that's the right way to go.
This is a perfect example of a focused founder in a way, right? Because you're going to, this is, I think, a good segue into a point that I kind of want to make as well, is as a founder, you're having conversations all the time with investors, with advisors, with partners, strategic partners, and so forth. And often, and I'm not saying that this is what's happening to you, Matt, but in this conversation, I'm kind of doing that to you, right? I'm like, oh, well, it would be cool. I think Tailwind, like I can see the future of Tailwind. This could be a future enhancement or a product, or maybe you should look at this as well. But you're laser focused. And I think that's such a great area to talk about for a moment for startup founders or entrepreneurs and how they navigate that. When you have this idea, the problem that exists, you're focused on tackling that, but you're getting feedback and insights from so many different places. How do you digest that? How do you compartmentalize that and weight it? Your experience going through an accelerator or incubator, any tips or tricks that you could share with other entrepreneurs, startup founders, etc.?
Touching a little bit on the idea of how to stay focused and how to stay really committed to a vision when you're getting advice from investors you talk to and partners, and you're coming up with other ideas all the time. And I think for us, like, there were periods of time when we definitely went down paths we shouldn't have, right? And we wasted time along the way because we were influenced by ideas that we had from other people. And we thought, oh, actually, that would be cool. Why don't we try that? But I think that is probably just a symptom of not having exactly the right vision or exactly the right approach in mind. And the reason that you get distracted is because you don't fully have conviction about what you're doing. So I think if you find that you are getting distracted like that, it's maybe an indication, not that those distractions are the right path to go down, but that you need to think more critically about exactly what you're doing. At a certain stage for us, and again, we've evolved a lot based on input from our users and feedback from the market. We get to the point where we really have conviction in our vision. I really believe in what we're doing now. So when other people now come to me with other ideas, it's very easy to stay focused because we have such a clear idea of what we want to achieve and we really believe in it. There's a saying about founders having very strong convictions weakly held, right? Which means that whatever you're doing, you should believe in it. But you also should be open-minded enough to understand when somebody puts new information in front of you that indicates you're on the wrong path, or you learn something new that indicates you're not going in the right direction. You need to be very responsive to that and very quickly able to pivot to something that makes more sense. So I think it's not a question of being able to ignore all that input that you're getting from other people. It's understanding the signals when something really is disproving your current thesis versus when something is like a tangent that you shouldn't go down. And again, we made a lot of mistakes along the way, but also learned a lot from all those stress tests about what we shouldn't be doing. And another thing that always comes to me, like another saying that always comes to mind when I'm thinking about this exactly, is about Edison inventing the light bulb, right? Where it took him like hundreds of tries to figure out how to invent a light bulb. And somebody asked him about how he felt about failing so many times. He said, I didn't fail. I just learned 200 ways not to build a light bulb. Before learning the one way that you do. So all of that stuff along the way is a learning opportunity. And yeah, I think we're lucky now to sort of be at a state where we really have conviction around what we're doing.
That's a fantastic elucidation around how you approach it. And it's not just, hey, ignore it and compartmentalize it, but how you take the signal and then really understand, like, is this something to look at? So with another area that I want to get into a little bit with you is similar to learning to understand the signal versus the noise of what you're focused on delivering and building, but also from an investment perspective. So I'm really interested in learning the investment landscape in Canada and what, in the incubating support on that front, but also from your personal experience on the investment approach. And also at the very end, if you could give any also tips and tricks, what maybe worked really well for you. We talked a little bit about your investor update email that you do But any advice from an investment perspective?
Yeah. And again, just to set context here, like we've bootstrapped to date. We haven't actually raised any institutional money at all. We will hopefully soon once we've again closed this loop and we're at that stage. But I would say, first off, the incubator we did next was hugely helpful in terms of investment. They're very well connected to most of the major investors in Canada. And so we're able to meet, certainly not all of them. There's lots of investors out there, but a big portion of kind of the usual suspects, the bigger investors that you would go to. And yeah, there's a lot said these days in the news in Canada about the state of the VC market. I think it's easy to complain about it and to believe that elements of it are broken and it's a lot better in the US. And it's true that Canadian startups now more often are raising money from the US than they did in the past, and also are flipping and reincorporating in the US, actually moving the company to the US rather than staying in Canada. So that's a real thing that I think is a problem in Canada. But
Why?
that
Sorry, Matt. Yeah.
no,
Why is that? Is it because of the talent, access to capital?
honestly, it's just supply and demand. There's way more money in the US. And what that means is there are more opportunities, there are more people to raise from. But also because there's so much money, there's a lot more competition for investors, as in like investors are competing to get good deals. Because they're competing, they have much higher risk tolerance. They invest earlier, they invest with less signal. So in that sense, I think, yes, it is often easier to get money in the US because they are investing earlier. They're investing with a higher level of risk tolerance at better valuations. That, in my mind, is just a function of, again, supply and demand. It's because there's more of them. In Canada, there's relatively less venture capital, and people complain about Canadian investors, Canadian VCs, not investing in early stage companies, investing at later stages. And that's true. But again, that's because there's less money chasing fewer deals relatively in Canada. And so, of course, Canadian investors can afford to look for more traction, invest in later stage companies. But what it does mean, unfortunately, is that there are lots of Canadian companies that end up naturally ending up in the US because there's more funds available there. And the only way is a very difficult problem to solve because it requires the ecosystem in Canada as a whole to be developed for people to make more money in Canada first, which they can then put back into the angel or into the VC ecosystem, and to stabilize that mismatch of supply and demand between investors and startups. And that's a problem that'll take a long time to solve, but a lot of people are working on it, obviously, from a policy perspective and a private perspective. It's a big focus in Canada, so hopefully it will improve.
Do you want to dive into a lightning round where we try to make Matt as happily uncomfortable as we can by asking him nearly impossible questions where he weighs in publicly on matters best left to time to sort? Shall we have that fun?
Absolutely. Matt, are you down for a little flash fiction
Let's
game?
go.
All right. So I am going to throw the first one at you, Matt.
Yeah.
Be an A, B, or C.
Okay.
And so the thesis is that we believe stablecoins will be a standard or optional payment option on travel booking sites like Expedia and Booking. A, it's not going to happen. B, it's going to happen within 2 years. Or C, it's going to happen within 3 to 5 years.
As a payment option, I think within 3 to 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not as bullish as me. I personally think it's going to be probably within 2 years.
I saw an interesting post the other day. Sorry, I know this is supposed to be a flash round. It was somebody arguing that stablecoins were never intended for humans. We were just the testers, getting them ready
I saw
for
that
agents.
post.
Yeah, you see that post, yeah. And I think, of course, Travala is built for that, right? That's where I come from, is Travala.
Right.
They're there to serve crypto consumers. But I actually think most consumers today just don't have the appetite to pay with stablecoin, because if you're buying something from a website online and you're able to pay in your own currency, there's less reason to. But once we start talking about cross-border transactions and we start talking about automated agentic transactions, now there's a real need for stablecoin to facilitate that kind of stuff. It's just not a problem that most travelers have. So I think unless you're a crypto consumer, which again, then there are niche OTAs like Travala that are built for you. So
here's my thesis, and you know, and we'll get to the next question.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
So earlier when you said the user, the human user are just the test users, and end users going to be agents, right? immediately in my head, that flips the script in terms of total addressable market for stablecoins, right? So if you think about, okay, how many billions of people in the world, and then a percentage of that potentially could use stablecoins, right? Versus AI agents, it's going to be endless, and they prefer using digital currencies because multiple reasons, efficiency as well as the fractional capability of it. And then on the other side, when you talk about incentivization of humans using stablecoins when they have already existing payment options like cash, credit cards, etc., why would they use stablecoins? I personally think they will be incentivized by platforms to use stablecoins because platforms are going to be able to say, if we can drive people to use this payment option, it's going to save us X, Y, Z. And then at the same time, having stable coins, depending on regulation and so forth, maybe the Clarity Act is going to help with this as well. But your platform that's accepting stable coins, and now you're going to be able to generate yields off of that stable. That, I think, for Treasury or CFO to look at that and be able to say, you know what, can we try to drive people to use stable coins because we're actually going to be able to generate revenue or from this versus paying more fees on credit card networks.
It's all good. It's exciting. Whenever the lightning round becomes slow rolling thunder, I'm very happy with that. Let's carry on. This second scenario, Matt, is that AI on our phones, such as Siri, will be the primary agent that'll orchestrate other agents to simplify our lives in areas like finance, travel, medical, etc. And in this scenario, there'll be an agent marketplace, just like today there are app stores. And the question for you, good friend, is this going to happen? A, never. B, within 2 years, C, within 3 to 5 years, or D, it won't be on a phone?
I'm going to go within 2 years for that. I think that happens before. I think there's more likely to happen than people using stablecoins because it will really change the experience for consumers. There'll be more demand for consumers for that.
I love it. Mike, anything you want to add to that, or should we?
I'll be honest. When I looked at this, this particular flash question, I feel like it's already outdated because how fast AI agents are moving. Like before we started this podcast, we're already talking about Perplexity's computer. I've been using Manus for the past few months. Essentially, that is kind of like browser-based agent orchestration where I think Perplexity, you're prompting this agent, but this agent orchestrates ChatGPT, it's orchestrated with Grok. I think it has 12 or 19 different AI agents that it orchestrate depending on what you're asking, what kind of task you're asking it to do, right? So if you're trying to video generation or something, it knows like, okay, this agent is better at doing this. So this task will be assigned to that, right? Thing that happened, I think, from a UI experience perspective on the go could be the phone. Within 2 years, definitely see that. We obviously see Siri moving towards Gemini as well from ChatGPT. So it's going to be very interesting to keep an eye on this space because it's just moving so fast. All right, maybe not the last, but the next question. Next flash question for you. All right, putting you on the spot again, Matt. So thesis, hyper-personalization in travel is here due to agentic AI and will get better and better as we give it deeper access to our data. Do you believe that to be the case? A true and false question here.
For sure. Yeah, true. Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, and I definitely think so as well. I definitely agree, especially, for example, like with Tailwind, hyper-personalization, I think that kind of enables it, right? With it, like what we talked a little bit about earlier, if AI agent is able to understand me because I give it access to my Gmail, let's say, now has all my booking history, which airline that I most often book with, or which seat do I like, and so forth. It should automatically be able to infer that through my confirmation emails. So it may have access to like my calendar, my photos, and so forth, to be able to infer and get all that information. And then immediately be like, oh, okay, go into Tailwind and see, okay, I know Mike really, he's a foodie, he's an adventure traveler, he likes go surfing or whatever. Oh, these XYZ influencer are the influencer, and that's providing these type of travel experiences, and then connected on that front. So I definitely think that's the case as well. So
it's just a data problem, personalization. And if you can aggregate enough data and you have powerful enough, agent analyzing it, then there's no limit to the granularity of the personalization that we should be able to provide for travelers, or in many things, I think. Yeah.
Because like in the past few years, like we talked about hyper personalization a lot, and I don't think it's ever achievable by a singular, let's say, supplier, because they don't have a full picture. They don't have a full picture.
Yeah.
If you are Expedia or Booking.com or Marriott or United Airlines and whatnot, you only have a snapshot picture. You don't have the end to end, and you don't have context and history. But with an AI agent that's able to gain access and then really see like your email, your photos, and so forth, I think it's going to be able to really derive that. And I think that's why hyper personalization in travel really is here due to agentic AI.
Totally agree.
So Matt, we only have 1.2 questions left, and here comes the point two. Point two is, in 2040, some people will still buy and collect vinyl records. True or false?
That is analog sound. Like, records actually produce superior quality sound to digital sound. So like, that's an example of where I think this is misunderstood, but technology has largely not made like the quality of the sound better. Records are still the best of that, so they'll still be around. I had this really interesting experience a few years ago. This is a divergence, but I went to a friend's house and he had an amazing stereo system set up with a record player and a CD player. Both, it was just years ago. I think it was an actual CD. And so he put on a Black Sabbath song on both the CD and the record, press play at the same time. And when you listen to a record next to, you hear the difference is so stark, particularly when you get loud and you hear all the distortions in the digital sound, that, yeah, I don't think analog records are going away ever, to be honest, until they find a way to produce like continuous pure sound with digital, which maybe they will, but it doesn't exist yet, I don't think.
Very cool answer, Matt. And if I can put in a small plug for the analog world, I think it points to the fact that analog is almost analogous to human advisors. And so as you lean into creators, I think some things won't go away as soon as some people think. Last question for you. This is the one. We did the point two. Here's the one. Decentralized technologies will shift the balance of power toward creators and travelers, giving them greater empowerment, choice, and control than ever before. And we could just leave that as a simple, short, true or false.
True. That's our whole thesis. Yeah. True.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. It's been, Matt, a huge, huge pleasure to talk to you. It's very
Likewise.
exciting to hear what you guys are doing. I think the future is extremely bright for creators and for everyone who's interested in how that vector can move upstream towards the influence phase. And so really a pleasure to talk to you, and I wish you a most wonderful rest of your day. Thanks so much for being here. Appreciate it.
Thanks very
likewise,
much,
Matt.
guys. It's been a pleasure.
Sorry about that, Matt. Yep, absolutely. And before we close, how do people find out more and keep track and stay in touch?
Yeah, you can go to tailwind.ai or app.tailwind.ai as well, as where the creator shop live. And we'll be putting out a lot of content, on YouTube, on Instagram over the coming weeks as we really roll out the launch. So yeah, watch out for that as well. We're at Tailwind AI on Instagram and YouTube.
Fantastic. And if they're listening, it's TALE wind, not TAIL.
Yeah, that's
right. Not tail.
TALE, like a story.
We're not wagging the
correct.
tail here. Yeah, like the story. Sure.
Tailwind.ai.
And hopefully we'll have you on a future episode where we can get into it more, when you can show us a little bit of work, from then till now.
Yeah.
And so again, thank you so much for sharing your time with us and some of the insights. It's been awesome.
Absolutely. Thanks to both of you.
Thanks for joining Joel and Mike for another episode of Travel Around the Block. If you have any questions or topics you would like to see discussed on the show, or if you'd like to be considered as a potential guest or sponsor, please reach out to us at hello@travelaroundtheblock.com. And of course, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Wishing you a wonderful day wherever you are around the block.